Brendan Compton back here at BRC Fallow Deer. Today's going to be something a little bit different. It's November, and I was fortunate enough to go out and shoot a deer with my bow the other day. And it's been good and cold the last couple of days, so he's been hanging in the shop. Once I got him, skinned and hanging, as long as the temps below about 40 degrees, and it was in the 30s in that building for 2 days basically. Starting to break him down into cuts. We eat a lot of deer, so what I usually do is bring it into this catch-all building. You can see a lot of stuff behind me, but I've learned several things over the years that have made the process easier and the end product better. I don't cut up a lot of deer. I'm not a professional. I don't sell the meat. I cut up a couple deer a year. But yeah, I've learned a lot. One of the things I've learned is table height. You won't be able to see it, but I've got this table. I'm 6'3", and it's at waist level or maybe a hair higher. Back in the old days, you're bent over like this cutting for so long, and back starts to hurt, and you start to get fatigued, and your eyes hurt from looking down, and this makes it so much better. Bring that table height up so your arms are comfortably bent, and you can just work back and forth and move stuff around without bending over. That was one of the easy things I've learned. But one of the other things is probably my least favorite part of cutting up the meat is trimming front shoulders, shanks, all those things, because they take so long, and you get a decent amount of meat out of it, but I'm always on that balance of a little less connective tissue or a little more time trimming, and I just hate that part. I always have. But over the last few years, I've learned that these things there are much easier ways to handle front shoulders and shanks and those cuts of meat. And the best way, I think, is to not trim them at all. Now there's folks who want sausage and burger and all that, and usually I get enough just from the trimmings that I do to fulfill that need. But it's a balance. You either get the ground meat off the shoulders, or you take more time to do it, or you do what I'm going to show you today. Again, I'm not a pro. There's going to be better ways to do this, but I think people might find it useful. It saves me so much time. But what we've got, the front shoulder. This deer was a 243-pound buck, so there's going to be lots of meat. But I'll just go through, breaking this thing down. I've already trimmed a lot on it. There's the connective tissue and I guess silver skin, you could call it kind of the same thing. If it's thick, it needs to go. But even if you're grinding, it's basically a connective tissue to meat ratio that causes a less pleasant eating experience. If you had 100 pounds of meat, 1 pound of connective tissue, you're never going to notice. I've got a scrap bucket down under the table. But vice versa, if you got 50 pounds of connective tissue, it's not going to be great. So you don't have to get it all off. Just get the easy parts, the thick parts, the fat, and that's kind of what I'm working through here. There's a big chunk of fat, right here. I'm going to take this thing, take them apart here in a second, but just for the sake of getting rid of it, the fat really kind of needs to go. Some people say it doesn't, but most people, it's pretty waxy. So it's liquid when it's hot, but it pretty quickly turns waxy, and it's just a little bit of it you'll never notice. But if there's too much, it doesn't only really taste bad. It's just that texture issue. So front shoulder, as it would be on a deer facing this way. So one of the other things I learned was the knives. I don't have expensive knives. There are better ones, and they probably hold an edge longer, but a lot of people go to the knife drawer, grab a knife and start sharpening or start cutting. And once you get used to sharp knives, there's just no going back. Again, these aren't super high dollar knives, but I sharpen them up first, and then I've just got a polishing steel, you know, that I'll touch them up with along the way. And it doesn't sharpen, it just kind of realigns the cutting edge. That's what takes it from like, yeah, sharp knife to you just kind of push and it cuts. It's worth the extra step for sure. So pulling this front shank off, again, I might be slow doing this, but basically you want to find the joint. Now this is pretty stiff because it's almost frozen. Try to cut up here. There we go. Oh, we're almost there. There we go. Kind of pop it free, and then it's just cutting everything else that's connecting it. Okay. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but there is the shank. Now my choices here are I can start trimming and trimming and trimming, and there's a lot of tendons and things in this front shank. I can do that, and it's going to take a long time, and I'm going to get in that situation where, you know, I feel like I shouldn't cut this off, but it doesn't look like I want to eat it, and do I cut more, do I cut less? So I started saving these a couple years ago, and the first couple times I've cooked them, I just throw it in the crock pot like that, just whole. Don't trim it, don't do anything. Now, put some seasonings with it. The first couple things I've done were, I think it was a meat eater recipe. I'm not a chef. I think it was called adobo sauce was in there, something like that. Anyway, kind of a spicier dish. Literally throw that in a crock pot, cook it, you know, low and slow for, I forget if it was 6 hours or 4 or 6 hours, and it just fell apart. All the connective tissue broke down. It was basically like pulled pork. And to have all that good meat without having to trim this thing out, I would rather hack up a hind quarter because it's faster and use that for burger, because I'm done. So the next pieces, again, you've got some choices of what you could do. I think I'm going to take off the boneless. Well, I'm going to split them apart first. So same thing, you kind of find the joint, because there's you know, the arm and then the shoulder. Again, I'm not going to be fast. This is the first one I've cut up since last year. So I can feel the joint. Cut through the meat portion. Just cut straight down to it. Way around, then you can kind of see, well, did I miss it or did I hit it? I got pretty close. Check this out. Look at that. So, several things you can do with these cuts of meat. I think this would be called an arm roast, maybe, and this is a blade roast. That's what I've called them. And we've done the same thing. Now, this is a huge shoulder blade because it's a big old buck, but literally throwing this in a crock pot like this. I mean, take off. Now, again, I trimmed it before I started the video, but all this thin little silver skin, you know, I'll take off the easy parts. Like I was taking off some fat, so I just went a little deeper and took off that silver skin. But you don't need to take that off. That breaks down. There's a chunk of fat there. You know, trim that out of the way. But it's just so much easier to not take all the time to do that, because it breaks down anyway. And This was, you know, we'll make a lot of tacos with it after it's broken down in the crock pot. Whatever seasoning you put in there, it freezes great. I've even taken an arm roast and smoked it first, and then thrown it into the crock pot. The bone pulls right out. It's like pulled pork. And yeah, you do tacos or anything you would use shredded beef or pulled pork for. Now on this arm roast, one thing I did want to try this year, I don't know why, because it, you know, bone in or bone out, who really cares? The bone pulls right out when you're done. A lot of people say the bone adds flavor. I'm not a chef, but this arm roast is pretty easy to trim around the bone. We're going to leave that portion on. There you go. A good butcher would say probably square this up, grind that, and there's a boneless roast. And again, it's so easy to cook. Smoke it. If you're going to smoke it, I'd take off more of this connective tissue, because if it dries, it doesn't break down so much. But it's hard to beat. It really beats hacking and cutting and thinking you need to take off everything that's white, and you just don't. And that piece right there, I'll cut off the part that's, you know, got some thicker silver skin, because there's not much meat there anyway. And then the thin stuff, grind it. So that's the shoulder. Now with the blade, and you could take a bone saw, because this, again, this is pretty big, and that's probably what I'll do. I'll probably take a bone saw and hack that off, kind of split the amount of meat. In fact, I'll just do that now. Cut through the meat portion. And a lot of people, you know, the people that don't eat deer meat, or say they don't, I think there's several different reasons why. I think a lot of people did like we all did when we first shot one. Sorry, you just can't really see this. Push the cutting board forward. We cut a steak, threw it on the grill, probably a butterfly backstrap, threw it on the grill, and overcooked it, and then decided that deer tastes bad. And you know, once you figure out how to cook it, which isn't like, oh, you have to cook this with a bunch of spice so it's edible. It's like you can't cook pulled pork the same way you cook a steak. It's just a different cut of meat. Obviously it's leaner. The great thing about it being leaner is you can add whatever fat you want. So cook a steak in butter. It's still less fat than, again, nothing against beef. We sell beef. But it's just another option. I really need a better bone saw. Got another idea. There we go. Okay. So there's two much more manageable pieces of meat. So from front shoulder, look at this. There's 2 pounds of trimmings, plus stuff I'd already trimmed off. You've got a shank to cook. You've got 4 other roasts, so 5 roasts, and I'm done. So you talk about not wasting meat. All the bad stuff cooks out, the meat's all there, and to be honest, most people end up with too much ground meat anyway. Kids will eat this. You would never know that it was deer meat after being in a crock pot.
Anyway, the big point of this video was this. That's from 2 shoulders. That's all ready to cook, other than the little pile of ground meat, or meat that needs ground. But roast, they're all great. Make great tacos, great anything you want for shredded beef. Save your shoulders, quit trimming so much, and try it in a crock pot. Smoke it. I like to smoke them first. Smoke it, at colder temperatures for 2 or 3 hours, and then throw it in a crock pot, because they can dry out if it's not cured or injected on a smoker. So you kind of get the smoke flavor with the crock pot texture in a way, I suppose. So give it a shot. Doesn't have to be whitetail, This will work with any venison, including fallow deer. So, like I said, a little bit of a different video, but we might do some more things like this that kind of showcase the eating part, cooking and eating part of the deer, because, at the end of the day, that's kind of why we're here. It's a great alternate meat source, super lean meat, great food if you, like I said, learn how to cook it. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.